Welcome to Clause 8, the #1 podcast on intellectual property. This special edition comes from the VIA Licensing Alliance Bridge Summit 2025 in San Francisco, where innovators, policymakers, and industry leaders explored the most pressing challenges and opportunities in SEP licensing today. Hosted by Eli Mazour and brought to you by TradeSpace, where ideas take flight.
So we're lucky to be joined by Subroto Bose at VLA's Bridge Summit. And we actually met about a year ago at a Clause 8 event in Silicon Valley that our mutual friend Shankar organized. And then I saw that you're coming to the Bridge Summit, so I was excited to see you here and we could have this conversation. So maybe you could tell a little bit about yourself and what brings you to the summit.
So the reason I'm at the summit is I worked at Dolby for many years and worked with VIA when VIA was a Dolby sub. So so I've worked in the licensing business for many years. I get invited. I'm neither a licensor or a licensee. I get just invited to this conference because of my past. But I always like coming here because I've stayed engaged in monetization. It kind of shaped how I behave how I plan my portfolios, how I look at patents. So I always enjoy listening to people who are actually using patents for monetization and how they're approaching things, what the market is doing, and so on.
So you're now head of IP at Astera Labs. So you have a bit of an outsider perspective. I guess, what is it being back at the summit? Any impressions from what you're hearing today, I guess, about what's happening in this ecosystem?
The one thing I heard which surprised me was the pressure of tariffs on the license business. It's not something it's not a connection I would have made.
Yeah.
So that was surprising. But I think I can see that as a valid excuse by licensees.
Yeah. So the licensees are saying they have less money to pay for the IP because
they have no money. I heard what they said, they have no money to pay.
Yeah. I've never heard, maybe you have at Dolby, have you heard a licensee say, we have our profit margin is too high. We cannot pay more for. So you said you were at Dolby, and obviously you worked a lot with standards and with monetization and licensing, and now you're head of IP. Can you talk a little bit about what perspective has that given you about building a new IP program at I don't know if it's called a startup company, but a kind of a company early in its IP history.
Sure. So as a Dolby, two things happened. So I was curious about pools for a long time before Dolby, because in the past, in the company before Dolby was at Altera, and Altera was a favorite target for NPEs. So I would read up on licensing and I read articles on licensing, and somehow I read articles on pools. And I thought that at that point, this would be a nice solution. So I tried to find more information on pools, which is very hard to do.
Yeah.
And even met Dolby folks at IPO when I was not at Dolby, and they wouldn't tell me anything. Yeah. So when the Dolby opportunity came along, I took it immediately.
And sorry, what company were you before Dolby?
Altera. It's a
and that was
a company.
It was a semiconductor, or?
It's a semiconductor company. They used to make field programmable gate arrays.
Okay.
Got acquired by Intel, and I think now I've been spun back out as an independent company.
So it's interesting. You were there and you were thinking it'd be nice if we had a patent pool in this area. Yeah.
The thing that kind of shaped me quite a bit as part of a Dolby experience was when you're working for a licensing company, there's a lot of respect for the patents, basically, because the patent is important because it's going to make money for you eventually.
Yeah.
So you don't approach a patent casually. No, there's a level of detail that everyone at Dolby goes through in terms of planning the portfolio, looking at the quality of patents. Also, another thing I did at Dolby was I sort of built up an active acquisition business. I was to buy patents if I could buy them at the right price. So I had reached out. I had connections with a lot of brokers. I would review several portfolios a month, and of course, when you do that, you see a lot of bad patents. So you see the good and the bad, and you get a sense for the things you should not, the kind of patents you should not file, and the kind of patents you should file. Yeah. So now when I file patents, I mean the two things that when I review a patent application that I'm filing today, the two things that kind of go the kind of analysis that I do subconsciously is when I look at key claim terms and what the construction is going to be. And at the back of my mind, I'm trying to construct sort of a rough claim chart. What if I ever had to chart this for what would the chart look like? Would there be enough support for what I'm claiming? And that how much of the specification is really going to be relevant to when I'm trying to assert the patent, and that helps a lot actually. And it's just and the fact that I've looked at so many claim charts over the years has been very invaluable because I can do that analysis fairly quickly.
Because you hear a narrative out there, and I guess it was driving some of the proposals. I don't know how close you'd be following in Europe about the SEPs. Is that these companies who obtain standard essential patents, they're just getting a bunch of garbage patents that don't read on the standards. But what I'm hearing from your experience at Dolby is that it's something you've thought about, it seems a lot, that to make sure you're getting high quality patents that read on standards.
It's the opposite. When I can't speak to every ACP holder, but typically a lot of these technologies have been in development for quite some time before they even get standardized. People have thought about exactly what the technology is. The patents have been drafted to cover the technology before they even get standardized. And sometimes they may not get standardized, right? Then the patent is not worth anything.
Another interesting, I guess, is about your experience acquiring patents, buying the patents. And obviously, I guess I'm a patent attorney by day, and I hear a lot from once in a while from people who know I do this podcast and know people in the monetization space. They're like, I know somebody who has this portfolio of patents, and they think they can sell it. But it's interesting, you were in the shoes of you were deciding what to buy from brokers. Right. Anything that sticks out to you about what made brokers effective or not, I guess, in terms of selling portfolios?
They're effective in the sense they know what portfolios are available.
Okay.
But my practice was, I didn't really, the brokers always send you claim charts, and some put more effort in, some put less effort in. But generally, we would do our own charting myself, and I've sort of maintained that over the years. So, I would not, it's just very simple, right? You wouldn't buy a new house based on someone else's representation. You kind of want your want to do your own inspection.
Depending on your personality, but but no, that's I guess knowing the right people. So obviously, I guess one of the things that you hear is that companies go, when they're in startup mode, maybe they'll apply for file for one patent application, and then they'll kind of forget about it till IPO, and then they try to acquire patents. Any thoughts, I guess, about that you're kind of now head of IP of a company that was a startup not too long ago, about what's the right strategy? Like when you're building, let's say, a company in Silicon Valley, and you're thinking about how much should I focus on building the right patent portfolio? I
think you need to file on everything that is important, because otherwise, once that ship has sailed, you can't really file. And Astera didn't do that. Astera Labs had filed patent applications before I got there, and then of course the portfolio grew after I got there. But it's really important to file patents, because otherwise you really don't have anything that's defensible.
And I know you talked about it a bit, but I guess it's interesting. So you were at a company with Dolby, and I'm sure they had a pretty robust culture of filing for patent applications and make sure it's protected. What was it like, I guess, to get that going in Astera Labs, and what advice do you have somebody who might be
it's interesting being the first IP counsel at a small company that has never had in-house IP counsel before, because part of the exciting part of it is you now have this technology that you can come up with a strategy to protect it. The other interesting thing is there is no IP culture in principle, right? People are not. They're filing patent applications, the inventions bubble up, but no one has really had a conversational strategy with them before. So I had to build that IP culture from scratch. And I had done a little bit of that at Dolby, but I actually did it a lot more at Astera Labs. And most of it is actually training people on IP. I did my first IP training, I think maybe a week after I joined, 2 weeks after I joined. And people had a lot of questions. And then I spent a lot of time talking to people. And this is also where being at a small company helps, because it's small enough you can actually talk to everyone within a few months. So you kind of know what people are doing, who's coming up with inventions. And the other thing I do always is I always talk to the people outside engineering, the marketing, sales, to see what their view of the technology is, what they think the roadmap is, what does the competition look like. So all of that really helps planning out strategy.
How good is their future vision? I guess because that's obviously...
This is interesting. So I've thought about this quite a bit, actually, so I can give you a cogent answer. You know this, right? As patent attorneys, we are basically in the business of, we are trying to predict the future, right?
Yeah.
This patent you're filing today is going to issue 4 years from now. By then, the product itself that spurred that invention has moved through several generations. So you actually, it's going to be valuable for something. The patent has to have value for something at least a few generations down the road. So you need to project the future. The question is, how do you do it? I mean, the inventors, it's typical for a chip company. The inventors are very focused on what they're doing today, and they know what the next generation will be to a certain extent.
Yeah.
They may not have thought through it in detail. Marketing has a slightly longer perspective, maybe about by a few years. After that, you're kind of on your own. And I kind of educate myself on the side. I go to a lot of the trade shows. I read new articles on the technology to at least see if I can project further.
Yeah.
And be right.
Yeah. No, that's a challenge. And obviously, I guess, Astera Labs is in a very... rapidly moving field, like it's an intersection of semiconductors and AI. There's, I would say, a pretty competitive space as well. You don't know where the competition is going to come from, and the engineers are very busy. I guess, how do you prioritize? You have that roadmap. You think you have some sense of where maybe the technology is going, but how do you prioritize? Like, what do you actually file patent applications on? What do you spend your time, I guess, getting disclosures? And
I try to make it as easy as possible for the engineers.
Yeah.
So effectively try to work with the materials they have already. My rule of thumb is I don't schedule meetings for more than 30 minutes. Because anything more than that, people resent. So if necessary, I'll schedule multiple 30-minute meetings. I try to make the meeting interesting and valuable for the people I'm talking to, because that way I can go back and they'll talk to me the next time. So I don't go through a lot of legalese. And the fact that I used to be a chip design engineer for many years before I became a patent attorney.
Okay.
So that really helps, because I can have a very quick conversation. You can have a shorter conversation about what they're working on, because you understand the vocabulary and what they're working with at their level. So, but getting time from people who are actually involved in R&D is always is tough. It's got harder because you used to be in chip design companies, you tape out and people had some time. That doesn't happen anymore. So most chip design companies, as soon as they tape out, they start working on the next version. So there is really no downtime where you can sit down and file patent applications.
Yeah.
So I try to keep up with them from the beginning to the end,
right.
And I do periodic check-ins. One interesting thing I did at Astera Labs when I first started is I had a desk in engineering for the first 3-4 months, so I could just hear the chatter. And then people know you're there, so if they have an idea, they have 5 minutes, they'll stop by and talk to you. You also know when they're busy, and then you shouldn't bother them because there's a fire. So, in terms of prioritizing my own,
that's a good practical step if you're head of IP at a new startup. This is where the engineers sit and where they're coming up with inventions. You're going to get value from that. Yeah.
And for a small company, it's important because no matter what I do, I don't want to get in the way of product development, because the patent is important, but only if the product actually goes out of the door at the right time. In terms of prioritizing my own applications, I think so far I've been able to file everything that I think is important. The only thing I kind of do is, I decide what I want. I'll file provisionals a lot when there's a crunch. Yeah. There's always a budget issue, because essentially part of the problem is Astera is growing. I mean,
Yeah.
it was smaller when I started. So my vision is to protect a much bigger company.
Yeah.
By the time, like 4 years from now, I'm hoping the company will be much bigger.
Right.
So the portfolio I'm developing today has to cover everything that company needs.
Right.
So I don't want to leave anything on the floor. But also want to delay costs.
Yeah.
So I do simple things like, these are all tricks but things like I file provisionals, I'll file, I'll delay international filing costs as much as possible by filing PCT applications. I also roll multiple inventions into one application, and so that way I can cover them later on with continuations. But I have not had, so far I haven't had to decide that I have not filed on something that I think is inventive.
And it's good. And obviously with if you use that strategy of filing continuations, you have more time to figure out if your roadmap is correct and what might be important and not correct.
That's another reason to do that.
Yeah.
I rarely file an application that has just one inventive concept in it, because I usually layer it.
Yeah.
So that way, many things happen. If there's interesting, important prior art, you still walk away with a patent, but also you can sort of draft the claims to read more directly on where the market is going later on.
Another topic that you and I have discussed, and has been a theme of, I guess, of Clause 8 is that, people think that because the patent system is not as strong as it used to be, you should really kind of rely on trade secrets as much as possible, and then just rely on patents when you don't have another option. Mm-hmm. I guess, how do you view those? Obviously, they're kind of complementary things, but how do you view, I guess, the balance of...
So trade secrets are important. I don't. But the thing is, you have to look at it very carefully. And I go through this. It's a fact-intensive. It's not a simple approach. It's not like a one-sentence summary, because it's very fact-intensive. Depends on the invention you're looking at. But one thing to remember is, and I struggle with this each time I decide to file a patent. But the thing you have to consider is trade secrets are useful as a defense mechanism only as long as it is a secret. If you don't control how that would leak into the public domain, you don't have any protection. And chip companies, we don't actually operate in a closed ecosystem. We have to disclose our we have to talk to customers. We have to disclose what at least at the feature level, whatever the features are. So not everything is going to stay a secret. The other thing is, there's an issue of like parallel invention. Typically, our edge is we can do things faster than other people, which means we're probably seeing a problem before they do. But chances are someone else who sees the problem will come up with a solution that's close, maybe not the same. So for that class of inventions, if you don't file a patent, someone else is going to file a patent.
Right.
So this is not a trivial analysis. You have to sort of,
Yeah. So you think what you think is what someone might think is a trade secret is not really a trade.
They may not all be a trade secret. They may not remain secret. Someone else might file a patent for it.
Yeah.
The things that are legitimate trade secrets.
Right.
Because you've done exactly the exact low-level implementation details, what it takes to make something work. Those are trade secrets, and those we would not disclose them in patents. So.
In the beginning of our conversation, you said you actually became interested in patent pools while you were at a different semiconductor company. You're now back at this company. I guess, what are you thinking about, I guess, in your space in terms of, the ecosystem towards, licensing technology? Is there room for patent pools, role of patent pools and so forth? I guess, what is your thoughts?
There has not been much in this space yet. So there are standards in this space, of course, because there's PCI Express, which is which is commonly used by all these all the server racks, and there's a new thing called UA-Link. But most of them were essentially developed and then standardized by single companies, like PCI Express came from Intel, UA-Link came from AMD. So there are no patent pools in this business yet. So, and we are essentially an implementer. So most of the time we participate in the standards, but most of the time we're implementing the standard rather than actually developing it.
Yeah. So I guess what do you think in the future? What do you think? How's it going to develop? And do you foresee a bigger need for pools in the space? Or
it is different for these things because mostly because unlike like MPEG-LA, for example, MPEG patents were actually my chip design background was developing chips for MPEG to implement MPEG. The patents were owned by several different companies. There was much more risk of patent infringement lawsuits, and MPEG was formed as a solution to that. For the standards that are being used today for interfaces, the portfolio is concentrated in one company. So, so it's kind of, it is different.
Yeah. So I think you have a very interesting perspective. You were at a company, that semiconductor company that was, I guess, probably felt targeted by NPEs. Then you went to Dolby, which obviously kind of saw the value in the technology that they were making and others were using. And now you're a startup, so you've kind of seen it from all angles. And now we're at the Bridge Summit, where I guess part of the reason it's called the Bridge is they want the licensors and licensees to meet and to better understand each other. I guess any wisdom that you have from all these different perspectives about the ecosystem and how I guess all these different sides can better understand each other and the value that they bring.
So I think most license, and this is where kind of patent pools come into play, is most license discussions, there has to be a value proposition on both sides. And generally there is, for reasonable licensors there is, because effectively, if you buy licensing charges are too high, you drive the licensee out of business, which does you no good. Right. So I think that's the key difference between true licensing companies and NPEs that just want a lump sum payment and they don't really care whether once you pay them, they don't really care whether you survive or not.
Got it.
I think licensors want the target to actually survive, do well, because if the target does well, they'll actually make more money.
Yeah. So obviously the patent pools have a long-term interest in both the licensors and licensees thriving.
Yeah.
but so do the licensors, obviously, because otherwise they don't. If there's no companies to use their technology, there's
also
no.
The licensors, some of these licensors typically are true technology developers. So they need some return to fund the technology development.
It's a good wisdom right there. Before we any final thoughts, and I guess my final question you could add them, but my final question to you is, there's probably a young litigator at some law firm listening to your story, and they're like, well, actually, I want to do what you do, be head of IP at this growing company in Silicon Valley, and help them kind of come up with their strategy and succeed long term. Any advice for somebody like that, I guess?
Sure. Yeah. So I get this question often because I mentor, but even today I mentor first year law students every year. The thing that has helped me throughout the years is, you have to be willing to. This is not a linear path. This is not a path I had planned out.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to see an opportunity to do something new when it comes along, and need to grab it. I mean, believe it or not, I started my career in law firms doing patent prosecution, and I had no intention of doing patent litigation actually. Until I was staffed in a patent litigation case, I started enjoying patent litigation, and then I kind of did more patent litigation.
Same thing you mentioned was with Kathy Vidal, right?
First few cases were with Kathy Vidal.
Yeah.
So I've always been grateful for that actually, because I would have never done it on my own. Because I was sure I would not like litigation.
Yeah. And
yet I loved it. I mean, so same thing with dealing with NPEs, and it was not pleasant when I dealt with NPEs. Then for the first time, but I finally figured out exactly how what the approach should be, and that somehow brought me into patent pools, building up the acquisition business at Dolby was also kind of opportunistic, because I kind of saw that this would be possible, and I built it up one step at a time. And finally, I had an approach, and I had a broker network that would feed me transactions, and I could get money from Dolby to buy them. So it's just the other thing that I haven't talked about is one of the things I also do is I manage trademarks. I manage the Dolby trademark.
Yeah,
and that also has been invaluable because trademarks got me into dealing with marketing, which I never dealt with before. And that's how now I kind of use the trademark card to talk to marketing, and I use that information to feed into my patent portfolio management. It's been it's essentially, but each time it's something I did not know how to deal with. I decided to do it, and then I learned how to do it well. So trademarks, I went to all the trademark conferences. I figured out who the key trademark lawyers were. We developed a relationship so I can ask them questions. So that's my advice, actually. Essentially, don't get stuck to the path you originally thought you'd take. See the opportunities when they come up and grab them.
Yeah, it seems you've been able to keep an open mind and embrace new things, which is not always easy, but that's great advice.
Also, because it makes your career a lot more interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining Clause 8 and sharing your story.
Thank you.